So the COVID-19 first case, as I talked about last time, was on November 17th. 2019. Now, as you could see, what you just saw was a global existential event. And we are now in that, and that all emerged at the time the Saturn-Pluto was almost into perfect culmination at the first COVID-19 case, which was tracked back to November 17, 2019. And the source here is for the South China Morning Post. It was a 55-year-old man from Hubei province who was the first person to contract it and for it to be reported. By December 20th, there was 60 confirmed cases in China, and the rest is now history. So the COVID-19 pandemic is the black swan event that will set off a larger X event. That's something I talked about. This is the time that on March 11th, 2020, it became officially recognized as a pandemic by the World Health Organization. And that is the time when the United States officially went on COVID-19 lockdown crisis mode, which, based on all the projections now, according to what we're seeing, will last well into April, May, and possibly early July. And we'll talk about why I believe it'll be around that timing when we talk about the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. What we're seeing here with the Saturn-Pluto alignment at draconian quarantine. So in summary, we have a plutonic deadly infection vector that has entered human society, requiring a precautionary and vigilant Saturn response. So Pluto is the pandemic, and the response to the Pluto pandemic, or the existential threat, is a vigilant Saturnian response of quarantine, a draconian quarantine, which requires social distancing and certain other countermeasures to address the virulency of the contagion. So the Plutonic and the draconian extremes of Saturn and authoritarianism restrictions have to be imposed across the entire populations, and this is what the quarantine is about. So we are seeing this now happen at a global scale, including Russia, which is now in full national lockdown. So the Jupiter-Pluto alignment in Capricorn is going to go exact in 3 days on April 5th. Historically, if you go back, what we have seen with Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions is famine. What we've also noticed as we have gotten closer, as this alignment became closer into effect, is we saw the total COVID-19 cases worldwide increase. So if we look here, this is up to March 16th. I'm going to revise this, but you could see the Jupiter-Pluto wave curve that started in late January 2020 and continues will culminate into the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction on the 5th. And you could see the correlation between this wave and the total COVID-19 cases worldwide. So the top timeline shows the increase in the total COVID-19 cases, and the bottom line shows the Jupiter-Pluto transit's exactitude amongst the overall triple conjunction that's now in play. We have this triple conjunction of the Saturn conjunct Pluto, the Jupiter conjunct Pluto, and the Jupiter conjunct Saturn. And this is where we could see the crisis began in January, and then we saw it spread as a pandemic as the Jupiter-Pluto culmination wave began. So we look at it here, we could say that we will see a peak in the global pandemic numbers, a peak in terms of the overall pandemic sometime into this month, right? And then it'll be a subsession. But there will be an eclipse that will occur in June at the time of this Jupiter-Pluto alignment, because this is the first Jupiter-Pluto alignment. There's going to be a second Jupiter-Pluto alignment. So this wave curve is going to go back up to this peak again in late June. So if you think of this as wave 1 of COVID-19, this is wave 2, and then we're going to enter a wave 3. So there's a peak in the wave 2, and then we're going to see, or let's say wave 2A, and then wave 2B as we get closer to the crisis. So there'll probably be a decline, but yet in certain nations, particularly in the United States, between now and May, we're going to see a peak. World numbers will decline, but in South America, particularly in Brazil, the United States, Mexico, even Canada, we'll see increase in numbers. We may even see an increase in numbers in the UK. The UK is a little bit behind the US, so we may see a peak in UK COVID-19 fatalities and infection rates as we get closer into the eclipse in late June. So the Saturn-Pluto acted as a foothold on the epidemic, and then it becomes pandemic as the Jupiter-Pluto alignment converges. You could see at this crossing point in March, we've seen all the nations by early March, and I believe early March was the moment that the U.S. lockdown went official, okay? And we saw the beginning of the collapse of the markets, which we're going to get into. So the real important takeaway from this tripled timeline is that there appears to be a provisional correlation between Jupiter's ingress into the triple conjunction and the escalation of the COVID-19 cases worldwide. And it's unclear how close this trend will remain, and it is unlikely that there will continue to be a direct one-to-one ratio. So the correlation is synchronistic. It is not causal. It is synchronistic. So we're going to see probably a peak here in Europe, particularly in Italy, and then we'll see a secondary peak in the second wave. Wave 1, wave 2, and then we'll talk later on in the coming weeks about wave 3, which will be happening in October, November.
If you'd like to watch more presentations like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join Global Transformation Astrology on Mighty Networks. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com or click the link in the description for twice-monthly webinars with Q&A, access to the growing library of previous webinars, and a collection of information and resources on today's most important topics, plus a monthly Ask Me Anything session for Gold members. We are now in the middle of a massive collective psycho-spiritual death rebirth process. Stay informed and be a part of the breakthrough, not the breakdown. Become a GTA member today.